Whether President Obama's meeting with his Chinese counterpart will really change anything in terms of opening up China to the U.S. is a big question. For a stab at the answer, we bring in Derek Scissors. He joins us now from Washington, D.C. He is an economist with the Heritage Foundation. He has testified before the U.S. China Economic and Security Commission. Derek, we're so glad to have you with us this morning. I know you did a white paper, which is pretty impressive and actually fairly easy to read, but in it you state that China, the U.S. rather, is second only to Australia in drawing Chinese non-bond investment, which I think is a fact that many of us overlook. But we're right after Australia as far as non-bond. What does that mean as far as the meetings that are even coming up in Chicago?
Well, let me just say non-bond investment, we focused on that because everybody knows the U.S. draws actually well over $1 trillion in Chinese bond investment. We wanted to talk about other things. It's a little bit surprising that the U.S. is not first because, of course, our economy is so much bigger than everyone else's, including Australia's. Australia is an important destination for China, but the U.S. should be ahead of them. And we're not, in part because we block Chinese investment and in part because China has some flaws in their own investment practices. We're going to hear from President Hu about how China wants to invest more in the U.S., and that's true to a point. But they want to invest in technology in areas that we don't want to let them invest in. We also tend to block Chinese investment in manufacturing, Derek, sometimes. Yeah,
there's a pretty clear list. And I mean, again, you put this in this white paper, which is really interesting. And you point out from 2005 to 2009, China has seen 56 business deals worth $100 million or more fall through. So, I mean, is it hypocritical of the U.S. to say we want to do more business with you, but every time China seems to make an overture, we squash it for one reason or another?
There's definitely an element of hypocrisy in the U.S. position. Some Chinese deals go through without a hitch. And then there was an auto parts deal that President Hu may talk about today, went through fine, $400 million. Then other deals get blocked. And it's not clear why some go through and some get blocked. And of course, as you know, that's a terrible environment for business where you're not sure what the rules are.
Do you think certain industries, I mean, it seems like a lot of the blocked ones that you reference in your research have to do with energy, which can be a sensitive industry, I guess, to work with as far as even ties to national security. Do you think it's safer for tech companies to try to do business together?
No, the U.S. does not want China involved in our tech sector. That's where we put the foot down very strongly. Huawei has had repeated deals blocked. Huawei is a Chinese telecom company. Repeated deals blocked in the U.S. Resources, we might now be opening the door. You're right that energy's been sensitive in the past. We allowed a CNOOC energy investment in Texas. We might be more willing to allow Chinese investment in energy than we have been.
Derek, without being too cynical, honestly, is anything going to come business-wise, bottom line-wise for U.S. companies from President Hu's visit to the U.S.?
I really don't think so. I don't think it's being cynical. You know, the big number deal yesterday was Boeing's $19 billion sale of 200 airliners, but that's pretty much what Boeing sells to China over a 3-year period anyway. So I think what we're seeing is the considerable business between the U.S. and China being wrapped up in a political package as if it's a breakthrough when it's just business as usual.
Hard to talk about China and the U.S. and some of the economic issues between them without talking about currency. Do you think both leaders are avoiding trying to make a statement about dollar yuan?
I think they are, and actually I think that's positive. I think we've been obsessed with currency. There are a lot of issues in the U.S.-China relationship. There are a lot of distortions on the Chinese side, starting with subsidies for state-owned enterprises. Currency is important, but it's not that important. So they are trying to avoid it, and I actually think that's a good thing.
Derek, thank you so much for the time, for the insight. Derek Scissors joining us there from Washington, D.C. He is the Asia economist with the Heritage Foundation.